Hi, everybody. We're going to begin formally in just a minute. But in the meantime, if you'd like to say hello through the chat, you can open up chat. And maybe so you can see just who's appearing here, put your view in gallery view if you know how to do that, so you can see all of us. Probably heard about something that's been happening in our part of the world here in Idaho that happened about 2 months ago. The four University of Idaho students who were murdered. And being in such a small town, nearly everybody knows everybody else, and it can't help but affect nearly everybody in town. And I tell some people sometimes that we have 7 degrees of separation in Moscow, in Idaho here. I say it's not 7, it's 1, and we all know who she is. And that's almost literally true. In fact, I could give you a name, but of course I'm not going to do that. And thinking about this and what's happened here, it made me realize at a kind of a deep level that there is no place on earth that's exempt from this kind of tragedy, and no individual exempt from loss and grief. That's today's theme. And I found 2 video clips that address it much more eloquently than I can, and I want to allow time for them, so I won't say too much more, except to say that this first 6-minute excerpt is from an interview that Anderson Cooper did with Stephen Colbert. It's a really kind of an amazing clip if you haven't seen it. They did this about 3 years ago. It was on CNN. And they talked about their own experiences with grief. And it's surprisingly personal for TV personalities. And in it, Colbert talks about losing his father and his 2 brothers in a plane crash when he was 10. And he tells Anderson it just always struck me how he says this. He says, I learned to love the thing that I most wish had not happened. And you kind of have to sit with that to understand what that means. And he'll say more about that in the clip. The second clip is done by one of the heroes of mine, Frank Ostaseski. And it's an interview that he did about the 5 invitations. And it's a book, the subtitle of which is Discovering What Death Can Teach Us About Living Fully. And he's one person who knows that more than almost anybody, having run a hospice in San Francisco for many years. So here we go. I'm going to set up so we can do a share screen and see this.
It's one of the things I have been touched by and sort of healed by the last 2 months is just people having real conversations with me about loss and grief and their pain. And I find it, I'm a WASP, we're taught to sort of push all our emotions deep down inside and pretend everything's great. But it's nice to actually kind of relate to somebody on that and talk about something other than this mishigas.
Well, I think when you meet someone who's had a loss, you have 2 options. One is to say, I'm sorry for your loss, right, which is a perfectly lovely thing to do. But if you can share your experience, then they're not alone.
Well, it's always interesting to me how when I bring it up, meeting somebody for the first time, and they say, "Oh, I'm sorry to bring it up," and as if what they don't realize
is
the
person
I'm
died.
Thinking about it all
Constantly.
the time. I mean,
Exactly.
it is, as you said,
exactly.
It is, it's one of my arms. I mean, it is an extension of who I am.
Quite possibly for the rest of your life.
Oh, without a doubt.
Yeah.
It's been 31 years since my brother died, and more since my dad, and there's not a day that goes by I don't think about it.
To the point sometimes where I go like, why is nobody asking me about this? Honest to God, like my brother's died 45 years ago, and sometimes I go like, how come nobody's asking me about Paul? But how would they know to ask? They don't know I'm thinking about him.
Right. And they would be uncomfortable to ask. I actually, this is going to sound weird, but for a long time, and probably still to this day, wish that I had a scar. I wish I had like a scar.
Harry Potter.
Yeah, no, like Harry, more like a Bond villain, like running down my face. That's unavoidable for people to see because it would just be a silent signal to everybody I meet that I'm not the person I was meant to be, or I'm not the person that I started out being.
But you're entirely the person you were meant to be.
I don't know. Maybe not. Maybe this is a warped version of
So there's another timeline with a happier Anderson Cooper?
Yeah. I mean, no. I mean, there's not. It doesn't exist in an alternate universe. But Yes, I guess if
I guess that's what I mean about like
But that's your faith.
my experience.
That is your
my experience, and for example of my mother,
Right.
and from what I read and experience of my particular faith, extremely imperfectly, admittedly, is that there isn't another timeline, and this is it. And the bravest thing you can do is to accept with gratitude the world as it is, and then, you know, as Gandalf says, so do all people who are in such times.
You told an interviewer that you have learned to, in your words, love the thing that I most wish had not happened.
I remember.
You went on. You went on to say, "What punishments of God are not gifts?" Do you really believe that?
Yes. It's a gift to exist. It's a gift to exist. And with existence comes suffering. There's no escaping that. And I guess I'm either a Catholic or a Buddhist when I say those things, because I've heard those from both traditions. But I didn't learn it that I was grateful for the thing I most wish hadn't happened, is that I realized it. Is that, and it's an oddly guilty feeling.
It doesn't mean you are happy.
I don't want it to have happened. I want it to not have happened.
Right.
But if you are grateful for your life, which I think is a positive thing to do, not everybody is,
Right.
and I'm not always, but it's the most positive thing to do, then you have to be grateful for all of it. You can't pick and choose what you're grateful for. And then, so what do you get from loss? You get awareness of other people's loss.
Well, that's true. Empathy.
Which allows you to connect with that other person.
Right.
Which allows you to love more deeply and to understand what it's like to be a human being, if it's true that all humans suffer.
Right.
And so, at a young age, I suffered something so that by the time I was in serious relationships in my life, with friends, or with my wife, or with my children, is that I have some understanding that everybody is suffering. And however imperfectly, acknowledge their suffering and to connect with them and to love them in a deep way that not only accepts that all of us suffer, but also then makes you grateful for the fact that you have suffered, so that you can know that about other people. And that's what I mean. It's about the fullness of your humanity. What's the point of being here and being human if you can't be the most human you can be? I'm not saying best, because you're going to be a bad person and a most human. I want to be the most human I can be. And that involves acknowledging and ultimately being grateful for the things that I wish didn't happen, because they gave me a gift.
Well, one of the things my mom would often say is that she said, you know, I never ask why me, like why did this happen to me? She would always say, why not me? Why would me be exempt from what has befallen everybody, countless others over the centuries? And I think that's another thing that has helped me think, yeah, of course, why not me? This is part of being alive. I mean, this is the suffering is the, you know, sadness, suffering. These are all, you know, you can't have happiness without having loss and suffering.
I wanted to really honor the people that I'd worked with. You know, my teachers are the folks that I cared for. You know, at Zen Hospice and beyond, and my relationship with them was very personal, highly personal, and they taught me everything I know. And so I really wanted to be sure that I did justice to what they had offered me. Yeah.
So the book is The 5 Invitations, Discovering What Death Can Teach Us About Living Fully. Mm-hmm. It is both a distillation of being with 1,000 dying people and all of that, and a lot of personal stories as well. So I just want you to do, as you wish now, to read from it a little bit and tell us about it as you wish for a bit here.
Okay, well, maybe I'll just read a little piece, maybe from the intro, and then we'll see where it takes us. It's nice to read to people. It's like story time. You know? Yeah. So let's see. Well, let's start with the people I was just talking about. Well, first to say, without a reminder of death, we tend to take life for granted. often becoming lost in endless pursuits of self-gratification. But when we keep death at our fingertips, it reminds us not to hold on to life too tightly. And maybe we take our ideas or ourselves a little less seriously. We let go a little more easily. And we recognize that when death comes to everyone. And this has us appreciate that we're in the boat together. And this helps us to be a bit kinder and gentler with one another. As we come in contact with life's precarious nature, we also come to appreciate its preciousness. Then we don't want to waste a moment. Then we want to enter into our lives fully and use them in a responsible way. Death is a good companion on the road to living well and dying without regret. I want to tell you a little bit about some of the people I worked with. Some of the people I worked with, and that Steve worked with, lived in terrible conditions, in rat-infested hotels or on park benches behind City Hall. They were alcoholics and prostitutes, homeless folks who barely survived on the margins of society. And often they wore the face of resignation or were angry about their loss of control. Many had lost all trust in humanity. Some were from cultures I did not know, speaking languages I could not understand. Some had a deep faith that carried them through difficult times, while others had sworn off religion years before. Niwen feared ghosts. Isaiah, his roommate, was very comforted by visits from his dead mother. They were roommates, huh? That was interesting. And then there was this hemophiliac father who I worked with, who had contracted the HIV disease from a blood transfusion. But a year before that, he had disowned his gay son because he had been diagnosed with AIDS. And now the father and son were living in twin beds in a single room and being cared for by Agnes, the husband's wife and the son's mother. Many of the people I worked with died in their early 20s, having hardly begun their lives. But then there was a woman I cared for named Elizabeth, who at 93 asked, "Why has death come for me so soon?" Some were clear as bells, whereas others couldn't recall their own names. Some were surrounded by love of family and friends, others entirely alone. Alex, without the support of his loved ones, became so confused from his dementia that he climbed out onto a fire escape one night and froze to death. We cared for cops and firefighters who had saved numerous lives, nurses who had tended to the pain and breathlessness of others, doctors who had pronounced patients dead from the same illnesses that were now ravaging their own bodies, people with political power and acquired wealth and good health insurance, and refugees with little more than the shirts on their backs. For some, dying was a great gift. They made reconciliations with their long-lost families. They freely expressed their love and forgiveness, or they found the kindness and acceptance they'd been looking for their whole lives. Still others turned toward the wall in withdrawal and depression, and they never came back again. All of them were my teachers. These people invited me into the most vulnerable moments and made it possible for me to get up close and personal with death. And in the process, they taught me how to live. I wrote the 5 invitations on a cocktail napkin about 30,000 feet over Kansas. Steve mentioned Bill Moyers, and Bill and I knew each other from something else, another program we had done together, and he had invited me back with a group of experts to have what he called a teach-in around for his crew and production crew, because he was making this wonderful documentary on dying in America called On Our Own Terms. So I prepared a very salient talk. It was really good. Yeah. And I arrived, and I was on a panel with some silver-tongued devils, whose names I won't mention, you know them. And when it came time for my salient talk, they had run out of time. I couldn't give it. The silver-tongued devils had carried on too long. So Bill pulled me aside and he said, "Could you just say something in a few minutes, that really speaks to the heart of this work, So I put aside my talk and I pulled out my cocktail napkin. And on it, I had written 5 slogans, 5 principles, 5 invitations. The first was, don't wait, Don't wait. Don't wait to tell someone you love that you love them. Don't wait until the time of your dying to find out the lessons it has to teach. The second invitation was welcome everything, push away nothing. Now this sounds good, it would make a great bumper sticker, right? But how do we do that, you know? To welcome everything and push away nothing, this really confronts us. The word welcome confronts our whole notion of judgment and comparing. To welcome everything doesn't mean we have to like what shows up or agree with it. It just means we have to be willing to meet it. It's at our door. I have a friend who went to dinner one night at the home of a man who was the president of the Psychiatric Association. And he had developed Alzheimer's in his last few years. And so when they arrived at the door, this gentleman had had a hard time now remembering names and recognizing faces. And so they rang the doorbell and he opened the door and he stared at them for a while. And then he said, I'm so sorry. I don't remember faces very well anymore. And I don't recognize people's names. But I know this is my house. And I know that it's always been a place where people were welcomed. So if you're standing on my doorstep, my job is to welcome you in. Yeah, yeah. The great African-American writer James Baldwin, some of you have seen this beautiful documentary that's out now, I Am Not Your Negro. It's a brilliant documentary. And in the course of that, in the course of his writings, but also in that documentary, he says something like, we cannot always change what we must face. But, wait, I want to get this right. We cannot always change what we must face, but we cannot change anything that we're unwilling to face. Yeah. So that's what welcome everything, push away nothing is. And then the third invitation is bring your whole self to the experience. Bring your whole self to the experience. Those of us that are involved in care of people at the end of life or caring for our friends and families, we imagine it's our strength or our expertise that will help. Yeah? And they do. But one of the things that I've noticed in my own work is that my helplessness also serves, and my fear also serves. They serve as meeting places with the people that I'm in contact with. They help me to build an empathetic bridge to their experience. I've found that over the years that the things that I was most ashamed of, the parts of myself that I was most embarrassed about or wanted to hide away, they actually became the very thing that allowed me to be with other people. They became my greatest assets oftentimes. Yeah. So to bring your whole self to the experience doesn't mean that you have to be perfect. It means that no part of you is left out. Yeah.
And by the way, in the chat, you'll see a link, palousemindfulness.com Zoom-notes, and that has the links to the videos that I'm showing here. You'll be able to get to the 10-minute clip. Plus, there's also a link to an 82-minute clip piece that's the entire interview that Frank did, and it's well worth listening to, all of it. I recommend that you do that. The book is 5 Invitations, and I love the book so much, and it's so helpful for people who are dealing with death and dying that I have a number of them, and when I find somebody who's dealing with this now or recently or is about to deal with it, I like to gift it to them. And the book isn't in the chat itself, but if you go to that link I put there, you'll find a link to the book, the 5 Invitations. And if I find your email address anywhere in the chat during the meeting and a request to send you the book, I'll be happy to do that. So before going to small groups, we'll do a meditation that has this week's topic as its theme. And one of the reasons I cut that interview a little short was because I wanted to make sure we had time for the meditation, because after all, that's an important part of what we're doing here today. So just making yourself comfortable, however you do that, as you're sitting or whatever position you happen to be in. And just letting yourself sense into how and where you are right now. How you are emotionally with what may be going on in your life, where you are physically, where you're sitting, what your senses are telling you about sitting right now. You're making contact with the chair or the cushion or the couch you're sitting on, and that's making contact with the earth. In a very real way, we're all connected in that way through the earth. The earth supports you right now. You sit. So just letting yourself feel that support through your feet as they make contact with what you're sitting on, how your weight is supported by what you're sitting on. Side or in your lap. And when you're ready, paying attention to breath, wherever it is you feel it most vividly. Chest or your throat or your nostrils, there's no wrong place to feel your breath. It's just wherever you can actually feel the movement of breath. You can just letting your breath move as it is, and you're receiving indications from the sensation of where the breath is moving. The breath is moving. Seeing if you can stay with those sensations all the way through an in-breath as it moves into an out-breath and turns around again. All our meditations, seeing if you can be gentle with yourself when your mind wanders, as it inevitably will, thinking about some narrative about what we're doing here, or something in the past, or something that's about to happen. And just letting that happen. We're not trying to keep that from happening. It's not possible, actually, once it's happened. Taking note of that and remembering we're paying attention to breath and coming back gently but firmly to breath. Slapping here, just noticing breath again. Ready, seeing if you can recall somebody that you've lost, either through a death or a breakup or misconnection somehow, or losing of your way with a friendship. Recall that person or persons and what you love about them, appreciate about them, or appreciated. This person or persons come to mind, recalling an experience you had with them that you treasure in some way. A specific experience or just a sense of something about them that you remember. It could be a specific time and place. Or memories may come up, and just settling on one or two if several come up. Specific memory comes up, you just have a sense of them as if they're just sitting or standing in front of you or beside you. As you experience their presence now with you, what you wish you could say to them now, to them, recalling a memory you had together, a wish for them, maybe a regret, maybe letting them know what they mean to you or to you. As you experience their presence with you, imagine actually saying that to them, a wish you have for them, or a regret, or a memory. Now you're holding both of you in their experience and noticing how they react in their experience right now as they hear this from you. And you may even experience them saying something back to you, something in response to that or something different. Have time in this meditation to come back to this experience of this person. But for now, just saying goodbye for the moment, knowing you can come back, and seeing if you can bring to mind somebody you care about now, somebody who's in your life right now, spouse or a partner, or a family member or a friend. As you think about them, remembering what it is noticing what it is you love about them. Specific experience you had with them that kind of typifies your relationship or somehow is creates the essence of your relationship. You experience their presence now is in your mind. It might be something that you haven't said to them recently but would like to say. To be sure to say before they're gone or you're gone. What would you want to have said? What would you like to say? You could even sit to you and how they would react once they hear what you have to say. The rest of the meditation will be in silence, and you can continue on with this theme in whatever way feels best to you and right to you. And we'll have about 6 or 7 minutes of silence, and it will end with the sound of the bell.